So our first panel is a roundtable on project development, risks, and opportunities. And I know many of you here have struggled in the actual process of taking a project from its actual concept through its definition, setting up the legal structure, the risk mitigation, the contracts, to financial close. And we know it's hard any place in the world. Okay. But we're here to talk about project development in Africa, and especially the special difficulties that we have here. And I think it's very enheartening. If we look over the last 3 years of doing these project development summits, first, getting the issue on the table, the lack of bankable, investable projects, and how we can work today on that. And we see that there are real public sector initiatives that are helping us. The presentation this morning on the European External Investment Plan, a one-stop shop to hear from Alan on Africa 50, the AFDB and its real frontal willingness to work and advance the private sector. This is what we need, this new, very practical partnership in moving forward. I mean, this has been an amazing group. Yesterday, in fact, Roberto, we talked about recycling, because we know the institutional investors that are here with us, you need well-established assets, brownfield assets. So if we could create that factory, that pipeline, that is a very quick crowding in. So that's terrific. But also, as I hear everyone speak, it's like we're putting together the different logos in the factory, you know? We have a conveyor belt, right? And so with this ecosystem of the project preparation facilities being available for project development to the private sector. So we've, over the past, had efforts, for example, to put together a DBSA, the network of PPFs with NEPAD, IPPF, and the like. So it seems that we need to push on this more so that you that are project developers here, you really know what's available and there is streamlined access. We know that's been a huge impediment in the past. Now, just to update you guys, the president of Senegal is almost here. So we're going to skip our break. And while we wait, we'll take some questions. Who do we have? Please identify yourself first. Questions, comments? Do I see some movement? Okay. Yes? Where? Do you have?
No.
Okay, well, let me ask you guys this, okay? We know, irrespective of the leading pioneer efforts of everyone, that we are incredibly short the amounts of project preparation funding we need. And early stage, as everyone has agreed, is where you need to get the design. You really need to understand how you're going to set it up, what kind of legal structure, if it's a PPP. We haven't talked in this panel about project finance, but we know if we use a project finance approach, that those deals are more resilient when you have a volatile country environment. And Moody's and S&P have done good work in actually looking at default and recovery rates. So we're still short. So what can we do to be able to increase the amount of funding, whether it's reimbursable or not at financial close? What is it we need to do between the public and the private sector to radically increase the amount of project preparation?
So I might jump in just to say, I think there has been a radical increase in project preparation funds. I mean, certainly we've increased, but Africa 50 coming on the scene is obviously a large new resource. And as I look around and now work with Electrify and now work with NEPAD at PPF, I see a lot of facilities that have just started. Climate Investor One. I could name a long list of people I've met with in the last 2 years that didn't exist 2 years before that. So what I think that is perhaps will be clearer to the market when projects that have been prepared by these facilities start coming out. And if we had that faster, it might be clearer that there was a bigger impact there. But in terms of facilities that have come online, certainly the EU has not only these, but additional facilities we work with. And yesterday we met with the Project Preparation Facilities Network and talked a little bit about everyone's resources and how and what new players there are in the market. It's not to say that you couldn't use more money. It's just that what is hampering projects hampering me from taking on more projects is not a lack of funds. It is a lack of additional projects that are at a risk profile that makes sense to put taxpayer funds into. I don't know if everyone else feels the same way.
I would jump into this. The problem seems to me that it is matching the funds that are available to the sustainable projects that can work. Now, most sponsors, and almost every sponsor, and that includes African governments, all governments, think that every project they conceptualize can in fact be financially sustainable. So let me just give you an example. Every country wants to build an airport like Dubai. It all wants to be a hub. And by the way, my latest intel tells me that even the Dubai model may be wobbling just a little bit. But so if every country in Africa or anywhere in the world wants to build a Dubai, then we don't have the kind of markets for that, so we're going to have to compete. And competition means, in this harsh world, someone wins, someone loses. And if you play the win-lose game, then you can have a great airport in Johannesburg, but a very poorly airport in another city like Durban, right? So it seems to me that rational planning, especially in the countries that we have in Africa, the collective market of Africa is huge and it's growing. But it's the integrational impetus. The European Union's successes have been because of the integration. Of course, they've got challenges now, but we'll take the 100 years of, or maybe 50 years of success before we get the challenges. So we have to do more to understand regional integration, the local value chains, the regional value chains, the global value chains, because not all of us as individual countries acting alone is going to be able to take the advantages that presents in globalization. And I think that's the way we need to even look at infrastructure. That how do we, the infrastructure that works best is the one that is integrated in countries, in regions, and that supports your industrialization program. Otherwise, you're building infrastructure just to build infrastructure. And I think it requires a new conceptualization, and it requires a dedication by governments and every time you put government leaders on a platform, they will always tell you we have the political will. And I keep the difficulty I have with the political will statement of governments is that, okay, if we all have the political will, then why are things not moving? I mean, and maybe we just need to change the word political will to something else and talk about deliverology. Right? You may have the will, but do you have the capacity to deliver that which you have the will for? And then we can find the gaps in the process. That is my take on it.
Do we have a question? Oh, we do. Okay, over here, a mic, please. Please identify yourself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Richard Day. I'm from Arup. I was at the launch of Koidik last week, the new kid on the block. And I just wanted to know, do the people on the panel, do you see yourselves in competition with the Chinese or in collaboration with the Chinese? Because for us as developers, there are lots of issues that we have to look at when you're looking at export credit insurance, rules of origin, you know, where does the kit come from, where does the consultancy come from, where does the EPC come from? And I think there needs to be more efforts to collaborate so that we can, you know, if it requires $10 million to get a project over the line to financial close, that doesn't necessarily have to come from one entity, it can come from several. So I'd like to know what the collaboration efforts are between all of the, I would say the Western players around the table, but the new kid on the block are the Chinese with COIDIC.
We can take another one.
Okay, do we have another one to put on the table?
Yeah.
Yes, here again. And I take the last question as sort of an equivalent to what we were talking about yesterday. Co-investment platforms, but in this case for project development.
Hi, thanks very much. Philip Gray again from GIB Capital. I was listening to Dr. Roberto, and it's very encouraging to take note of the fact that there's a lot of work going into assisting African, governments move in the right direction. It's unfortunate that, notwithstanding all the efforts, when you visit these African countries, it's not very evident that we're getting that level of support, because you still see a lot of poor infrastructure, you still see a lot of, poverty. But I'm sure we're going to get there, boldly into the beyond, if I could say. Right, so just coming to the questions, I've got several questions for Alex, Mo, Lida, and yeah. So with Alex, I think it was to your opening remark with regards to the projects that you're looking at and the uptick in the number of projects from 4 to 10. I find that very exciting, because out of 54 countries we've moved up to 10. That's massive. But what I would like to know is, with energy renewable being the preferred, what is stagnating investment in transport infrastructure, mining infrastructure, and oil and gas? To Dr. Roberto, what effective legislative changes are you seeing on the continent that evidences African governments are maturing to project development phase, considering bankable ones are already a challenge? And
we don't have to answer.
To Mo and Lida, I've got two questions. And this
well, please apologize, but the president is here. So maybe, how much time do we have? None. Okay. So can I encourage you to follow up directly when we do have our break? But everyone should stay here. Okay. Please do not leave. But please join me. I am so happy I'm in this room learning and inspired by the hard work everyone is doing. And so please join me in thanking our leaders.
Doing business in Africa. You can't afford to be without Africa Investor.